Hello, my name is Alex Walker. I'm the CEO of East Star Resources. East Star Resources is a London-listed company focused on exploration in Kazakhstan. We've got 9 projects in 3 mineral districts. We've got a rare earth project, we have a gold exploration project in an orogenic gold belt, and we have a copper lead zinc project, which is VMS in the Rudny Altai volcanic massive sulfide belt of Kazakhstan.
Alex, lovely to meet you. It's the first time we've met or spoken here on Crux, so I appreciate you coming on. Kazakhstan, that's I've worked there in the oil and gas business. Lovely people out there. Why have you gone there?
Look, it's a very good question. We were searching for a place that was had the right trajectory in terms of operating environment for mineral explorers. I've been in and around this industry for close to 20 years, and we're noticing that certain jurisdictions were becoming a little bit more difficult to operate in, and Europe was very much one of those. We were looking at places that were showing huge deals and huge mineral potential, but were very much unexplored. And when we came to Kazakhstan, originally we were searching for a continuation of the trend that ferroalloy were on. They had a vanadium operation here in quite a substantial market cap. But when we came here, it wasn't just that part that we fell in love with. We fell in love with the country, with the copper potential, with the people, and the operating environment, and we were very determined to do business here.
Right. I mean, you're not on your own. There's I've certainly worked in the oil and gas sector there, and lots of them. Mining, is that a big thing in Kazakhstan?
Oh, it's huge. It's hundreds of years or thousands of years of history of mining, certainly. So it's very much in the lifeblood of the country, and it's become, in particular, because of a more of a strategic decline in carbon energy. Mining is getting a new boost for Kazakhstan. So major operators here, Polymetal, you've got Glencore, you've got ERG, you've got ArcelorMittal, and then lots of companies in exploration. Rio Tinto and Fortescue Metals are 2 house brand names that are here in a big way.
Right. Okay. So I guess people would be looking to try and understand what's Kazakhstan like for foreign companies coming in. Is there a good sort of mining law there in terms of, is it easy?
Yeah, absolutely. And the timing of us entering is sort of perfect. I've got a bit of a catchphrase that Kazakhstan's Western Australia in the 1970s. And
what do you mean? What do you mean by that? What do you mean?
I mean, well, it's several-fold. One is that they changed their mineral law in 2018. And it's been modelled on that of Western Australia. So before 2018, anecdotally, people would say it used to take about 2 years to get an exploration license, and it now takes 10 days. And we're a testament to that. We've been awarded 5 licenses that we've applied for this year, all very simply. So the new mineral system is based on first come, first serve. It's a far more efficient system than it has been in the past. And so explorers can come here and get things done. And the other reason it's like West Australia in the 1970s is just completely exactly the behemoth of the size and the untapped potential. It is almost exactly the same size as Western Australia. So WA is just over 2.7 million square kilometres, and Kazakhstan's 2.65, which, by the way, is the size of Western Europe. And you've got these ginormous mineral belts which have had surface expressions, scratchings. They've got artisanal miners on them. They've got gold workings all over the shop, and just have had no modern day exploration techniques, geophysics, methodical exploration. So that's why we're here, and it's now just trying to maintain a focus and figure out where the best targets are.
And people, I mean, I kind of like that kind of unexplored. It's a virgin territory in that sense, and that's he dares to tread first. Can do well out of it. But how do you go about doing that? I mean, where are your properties? You talk about 9 different assets. That's a lot for a junior.
Yeah, well, it's in effect it's really 3 mineral districts. So we've got 5 contiguous licenses, for example, in the Rudny Altai belt. Why are we focused on there? Well, look, when you're a small company, you've got to pick and choose your battles, and one of the things that you want is early stage success, as de-risked as possible. And the other thing that I think you want is optionality for development. And the Rudna Alto Belt is that in spades. So there's two major operators there in Kaz Minerals and Glencore with Kazzinc. They've got operating mills that are underfed. There's smelters in the region. There's power, water, rail, everything that you could possibly want, literally going through our tenements on your doorstep. So, if we find, we've just announced yesterday that we have a copper lead zinc deposit. So it's no longer a question of if we find something. The economics for development, the economic threshold for development for projects like this are incredibly low because of that infrastructure, of that mining history and so on. So that's why we picked that region. And then from a geological perspective, we picked it because, as I said before, we feel like it's been drastically underexplored. It's significantly lacking modern exploration techniques across the whole belt. So we picked up an area in the middle that was undercover, and it's got mine along the Searchish Fault. Nothing here, mine to sell it. So we pegged this bit, the cover, and it's already starting to pay off.
Right. Okay. So you're conscious. You said you got to get focused, because I think the difficulty where you're sort of £6-7 million in terms of market cap. I know you've raised some money, so you've got a bit of money. We'll talk about that in a second. But you've got to get focused. And so how should people look at you? Are you after rare earths? Are you after the copper, lead, zinc? Are you after gold? I mean, what type of company are you?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, Matt, because you can't do everything, right? And the first 12 months of us listing was what we've been trying to do is give investors optionality, because let's be perfectly honest and fair about this, exploration is a risky game. We've been on the ground here in Kazakhstan for a couple of years. We started reviewing over 150 projects available before we decided that the best way forward was actually just to peg ground ourselves. And part of that was just, going through negotiations and the potential difficulties of doing regular capital markets negotiations with locals. But we've ended up with this portfolio of fantastic assets, and we've spent the last 12 months significantly de-risking them with some data obviously still to come. So now we're at this critical juncture where we've got a rare earths project, which is a historical deposit. We've drilled it, just 1,001 meters of RC drilling. We're going to await the assays that should come this quarter, and then we're going to do the leach test work. So that whole process will define whether or not we've got quite a significant and a potentially developable rare earths project.
Okay, so given you've approached pegging yourselves and finding these assets yourself after having reviewed 150 plus opportunities, is you've got to be really clear about what your model is. Whether you are half prospect generator, half explorer, how you intend to finance going forward, because exploration, it's a risky game, but it's also a game of continually raising equity and diluting shareholders. So again, coming back to the question of what am I buying into? What do I get out of it? What's the business plan for you guys moving forward?
So it's a really good question, and what I would say is that until today we've been a company that's providing optionality for shareholders. Now, what occurs from here is it's easy to be a project generator, and that might still be a feather to our cap here, because we've got all the expertise and we've really built a knowledge in-house of doing that. But I'm also acutely aware that if you make that your business enterprise, then you are beholden to other parties, their timing, and so on. And that's not the way I want to do business either. We want to be in the front seat driving assets and driving the timing to deliver value to shareholders. So what I believe we will be throughout the course of this year, and very definitively by the end of this year, we will have 1 to 2 projects which we're putting JORC resources on, that we have the capacity, or we want to demonstrate the capacity to take through to development or sell, or whatever the appropriate valuation is for shareholders at the time. Anything that doesn't fit that basket, we will look to joint venture out, or we'll look to use as part of the project generator model, and we'll still try and obviously attribute value to that. But it's pretty clear in my mind now that we're going to have two projects that are ready to move into feasibility, hopefully move into feasibility, towards the end of this year, early next year.
Oh, as soon as that. Okay, interesting. Look, I always think it's important to understand what's in the minds of the management, and specifically the MD or CEO, in terms of how you manage the money side of things, because raising it is hard. The allocating is a little bit easier, but if you've got that kind of focus on two core projects, and you're happy to JV, flip out, sell, or just dump projects, it kind of helps. Okay, so understood. Can you just tell me a little bit about you, though? And what when you say you've been at it for a while, but what's your background, or what have you done that's similar to this?
Sure. So I started in Perth, Western Australia, and I was essentially in mining finance. I worked for a company called Patterson Securities, who were probably one of the largest brokers at the time, certainly in particular for small and mid-cap mining spaces. So it's, if I was in Silicon Valley, I'd have been raising money for tech companies and getting associated with that. But Perth, it very much comes in the blood. And I'm often reminded by people that I was actually born in Cornwall, so there might be a bit of tin and mining in my blood in that sense as well. And so in doing so, you grow up very quickly in the mining finance world for all the good and all the bad, let's be fair. So, I went through that process. I understood how the system worked. I got to understand the players, the technical aspect of mining. When you're looking at it, you grow your knowledge base every day. And I did a master's of mineral economics as well, just to ensure that I had that strong basis of understanding mining economics side of things. And after a period of time in 2013, I moved to London and ran a London office for Patterson's. I then joined, after about a bit over 12 months, I joined a London boutique investment bank. Did that for about 3 years, continued to structure deals, raise finance, and so on. After that, I joined Pareto, which is a big Norwegian bank that did bonds and equities and so on, which you might know. And then during that time, obviously you grow quite the network. But one of my close friends was a private equity geologist, and we'd always said we'd try and start a company together. And so eventually we did, and we both jumped ship to the junior end of the market and listed a company on the Australian Stock Exchange, which was prospective for vanadium in Sweden. That was a really interesting couple of years for us. I mean, certainly cut our teeth on the other side of the fence quite drastically. I still believe that's probably one of the largest vanadium projects in the world, just undrilled. Had a lot of other issues associated with it, with regards to Swedish law and getting approvals and so on and so forth. And so that was the time when we started to realize that was going to go slow. It still had huge potential. That's when we started to focus on Kazakhstan and so on. The culmination of all of that, when COVID hit, was that it was really difficult, obviously, to do anything outside of your home country. So that entity did some deals in Australia. The share price went up very well. All shareholders got looked after. But my business partner and I said we don't want to, we don't have an angle there. We don't have a point of difference, and that's quite critical for us. So we sort of handed over that company and we left, and he went on to do another thing, and I went on to run the established Kazakhstan part of the business.
Right. So who he's the technical part of this? I mean, because obviously as a financier, it's great in terms of talking to markets, raising money, etc. Structuring deals, but when you're going after what you're going after on the ground, you need a team there. What have you got?
Well, that's it. Yeah, and it's a good point. It's really important to have the right technical team. So, he was a huge part of that. With the culmination of ideas and the due diligence at the start. Another part of that team, and actually who became a founder of this company as a private entity with me. His name's Dr. Rainer Elmies. Actually introduced to me many years ago by one of Crux's favourites, Brandon Munro.
Right.
So yeah, so
Very good.
he exactly. So Brandon held Raymond in very high regard. I've met him a number of times over the years, and he's just as good as they come when it comes to geology. And he's sort of operating something like 6 mines or development, exploration, and operating mines in Namibia at the moment. He's got 5 or 6 discoveries to his name, and he was born in East Germany and speaks fluent Russian. Did his PhD in Russian. So he came in as an early stage investor and helped with all the original technical due diligence and so on. Obviously, since then, the team's built out quite significantly, and a few people have come and gone. We've got 4 full-time geologists on staff at the moment. We have 3 consultants, and these are just fantastic, picking the eyes out of local operators in terms of how you get the most out of them. We've got this chap, Igor Edidovic. He used to work with BHP, and he's got all those on his resume, and you wouldn't not want for a better person conducting your field surveys. But he's also incredibly good at taking these historic maps and georeferencing them correctly, and then digitizing them into AutoCAD, and then we upload it to new systems, which is really difficult and a real art. So we've got a team of people around that do things like that.
It's amazing, actually, the amount of data done by the Russian Geological Society or equivalent when we were started hunting oil and gas. It's phenomenal amount of data. But look, okay, I kind of want to get into it a little bit more. Okay, so first mover advantage. It's like Western Australia in 1970s. Licenses are easy to get, and you've got a team on the ground. Great so far. With regards to, let's talk about money. So how much money have you got? You raised some money recently. So what are you sitting on at the moment? Where's that going to get you?
Yeah, so we listed in January 10th of 2022. We raised 3.1 million quid into a shell that had a couple of million quid before that. I think post fees, when all said and done, and the money we were sitting on once everyone had been paid was about 4.1 million quid at the start of that year. We reported, I obviously know what we're sitting on at the moment, but until we release those results, I can't give exact figures to everyone. But we're not desperate for cash, so I can assure you of that. But I think the last time we reported was 3.2 million quid, which is the middle of last year. But we've been drilling, we've been putting out results and so on. Yeah,
and we'll talk about that again in a second. So I'm keen to understand what you're actually gonna do with that capital. For sure. Okay. So the money side that's kind of fine. So where are you now, by the way? Are you?
I'm in Almaty. Yeah, I live in.
You're in Almaty. Okay.
Family, yeah.
Oh, you moved the whole family there. All right.
Yeah, we did. It was August. It was before the IPO. It was August of last year. We moved out. So I've got a wife. My daughter's turning 5 next week, and my son's 2.5. And they're at Jetski Sad up the road. My Russian is improving tremendously slowly. I think my kids are better than I am. So we're very well settled here, and it's been a game changer.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's good. You're not managing this thing remotely. Okay, so that's good news. Okay, so let's talk about what the plan is for this year. You've obviously got two kind of areas of focus. So can you break that down for us?
Certainly. Well, let's say we've got 3 areas of focus. But the exact program's yet to be determined. I'm going to keep it simple and just do it from a news flow perspective in terms of most recent. Yeah. So let's start in the east, and we'll talk about the copper, lead, zinc. So we've literally just announced yesterday that we have a historical deposit. So more than 45,000 metres of drilling on this one particular target area. Over the region, there's about 67,000 metres of drilling. We've digitised all of it. There's patches that are still to come. We're adding inclinometry and a few bits and pieces. But basically, we've started the work to do a mineral resource estimate for that. Now, that won't be JORC or 43101 because we don't have access to the core. However, it will hopefully, it will be able to be published as an exploration target, but an exploration target based on, 75 metre spaced boreholes in much of the area. So something that we'll be very confident about. Our intention then is to drill that along with our EM targets So in the same region, we've called it the Vakuba Ore District, and it's based around this Loshin Formation area where there's a series of very, very high grade VMS deposits, and there is this basically a sedimentary hosted basin along with that. So let's not get too technical. The deposit is part of the SEDEX aspect of it. We could hopefully re-drill that this year and convert that into a JORC resource. And we'll drill these VMS conductors, which they're higher risk, but they're very, very high reward. And an example of one of these that's in the district, which is mined out, is Pokrovskoy. And Pokrovskoy was about 25% copper equivalent. So I don't want to promise investors those sorts of grades, but the other mines in the area are still, in excess of $300, $400, $500, $600 a ton at today's prices. So very, very impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so and here's the thing. Again, I've asked you. I spent a bit of time at the beginning asking what am I buying into, and I still want to kind of go there because as you say, it's high risk, high rewards, right? It's either going to work or it's not. It's sometimes quite binary, right?
Yeah, it was high risk.
Well, I know, no, but it still can continue to be. I get the announcements over the past couple of days, and I get what's going on in terms of closology, neurology in the shadow of a head frame, and all of that kind of good stuff, right? But I've got to be realistic here. It was like, so my question is in terms of your ability to manage the money, so I think effectively, and by effectively I mean I've got to get the balance between putting some good stories into the market and people catch their attention. 19 meters at 14.5 grams per ton is quite nice, but you've also got to do stuff on the ground which is effective too, which kind of moves things forward technically, right? So you got to get that balance right. So how do you allocate each pound sterling to maximize the effect of both of those things?
Yeah, I think we need to be. You've hit the nail on the head. You need to be realistic about all of your targets. My intention, and one of the good things about having a number of assets, despite the fact that it might be perceived as a lack of focus, is the ability to make much better decisions each year as to how to allocate that capital. Right. So we've got X dollars in the bank today, and before we start spending big checks again in terms of drilling, which is when obviously your capex goes up, we're going to know how de-risked our rare earths project is, for example, because we'll have assay results and leach test work. So we already know that it's shallow. We already know that it's free dig. We already know the infrastructure in the region is supportive. We already know how the Akamat, which is like the municipality, feels about the development. And they've said to us they'd even bring power and water to site. We've got this big picture here that we think is great. And there's a big question mark. The one question mark over it is, will it leach? How well will it leach? So if the results are horrible, which we obviously don't expect them to be, but if they're horrible, then that's easy. That's decision made. We no longer need to allocate capital to that project. But if the results are what we hope and expect them to be, well, then we'll be able to deliver that to the market and say, look at the comparisons. All of our peers are worth $100 million with very similar projects, and it'll cost us, $3 million, for example. Don't quote me on that number, but this many millions of dollars to drill this out, get the extensions, and potentially significantly increase the size of this resource. So that's one example there. Another example is the copper, which we've just announced. We know there's an old resource there. For $1 to $1.5 million, we should be able to convert that to a JORC resource. It's not a very big check, when you're saying, well, actually, we're converting something to a JORC resource in an area where people will potentially buy our ore, buy the mine. Your development optionality is huge. So, and I don't want to detract from the gold as well. We've obviously got gold assays pending, but where it stands now is that we've got two projects where we believe we can convert these to JORC resources within 12 months. It's quite clearly to me that is de-risking and adding value in a very significant way to shareholders. So in my head right now, that's going to be a big chunk of the focus.
Okay, brilliant, brilliant. And then just finally, in terms of the share register, board of management, 12.5%. How much money have you put into this thing? You know, how committed are you? I mean, you obviously moved your whole family. That's a pretty good start. But
I, yeah, I mean, I'm 11 of that 12.5%. So
wow. Okay.
you
Okay.
don't get
Well done.
better aligned yeah, basically wanting the best for shareholders. Um, I know dilution isn't the be all and end all, but I am very protective of dilution and the share price. And the major shareholder is the Flannery family out of Australia, which is a
Explain
very
who they are for people who may not know them.
Sure. So the Flannery family, they made their money originally. I think the first big money they made was selling their coal project back in 2007. Don't quote me on the exact numbers. It was something like 500 or 600 million was their cut. And they've kind of built an investment empire from there. So they've got a fund that's sort of 300 million that's small cap mining, and they've got property portfolios and other bits and pieces. But they're wonderful, tremendously supportive, understand the business very, very well. They own 17% of the company, and I speak with them every couple of weeks, just to make sure that they're in line with our strategy. So they're the largest. I'm the second largest. I put £45,000 into the IPO at 5p and helped also invested all my time and energy for the year and a half, and capital, tens of thousands of pounds before that, to get it to where it is. So yeah, I'd say we're aligned. I'd say we're invested. I'd say 5p is the price that I last put money at, and I'd love to see the next money going at a higher price. So that's definitely going to be my focus.
Brilliant. Well, Alex, thank you for introducing your story there. I think these are always fascinating to sort of see how people go about engineering these things and building companies. So stay in touch and do let us know how you get on over there in Kazakhstan.
Brilliant. Thanks for your time, Matt. Appreciate it.